Hello, everybody. So this is Chapter 7, Dearborn Essentials of New Jersey Real Estate, Key Terms. Okay? I'll go over a quick thing that we're doing. Here's how it's going to rock and roll. I am going to give you the definition that's going to come up. I'm going to give you the word that's going to come up. I'm going to wait a couple seconds. Then I'm going to give you the key term explanation as outlined in the back of that chapter for Dearborn Essentials of New Jersey Real Estate. So, and also, if there's any further explanation I need to do, I will kind of give you my thoughts and everything on it. Like, is this a good way to remember this? Is there something else that you need to know? Etc., etc. Corporation. Corporation. This is a legal entity considered to be a person. That's it. Corporation is exactly that. Devisee. Devisee. Person named in a will to inherit real estate. Now, if you haven't heard me say this before, I'm going to give you an easy way to remember E and or. So a lot of times we're going to see those suffixes on words, and I believe it's suffix. Please correct me if I'm wrong. My English isn't great, but at the end of a word, you're going to see either EE or OR, and a lot of times, as far as our vocabulary. So you're going to see mortgagee, mortgagor, and what happens is one gives and one receives, grantor, grantee. In this situation, devisee has to do with devising. Devise means to will real estate, right? So EE, I always think receives has a lot of E's in it. So I think EE receives, OR gives, OR gives. So in this one, if you understand what devise is, to devise real estate, and how I remember devise, I think of like, I see the V in devise, and I think violent, I think murder. So again, this is my quick, easy way to remember it. So I always think someone's dying in devise. And do not get it confused with demise, okay, with an M, where you're actually leasing real estate. You're actually renting real estate. There's a leasehold estate involved in a demise, to demise real estate. Devise, it means to will or inherit, and in this case we're talking about devisee. So we've already established that EE receives. So if EE receives, devisee is the person named in a will to receive or inherit that real estate. General partnership. General partnership. That's a group with each partner completely liable. General partnership, no real dividing of liabilities in situations. This is general partnership. If you're going to be talking, it's a group of people with each partner completely liable. Joint tenancy. Joint tenancy. Non-married persons with rights of survivorship. So let's talk about joint tenancy for a couple seconds, okay? I'm just going to give you my quick explanation of it so that we understand it a little more than this. So joint tenancy is a way that we could take title to a property. Title is ownership of property, right? Okay, so this is a way that we could take title to a property. This is the prime benefit of this, okay? The reason someone would enter into joint tenancy is because there are multiple people involved and they want to have the rights of survivorship. The rights of survivorship means that basically when one individual in the ownership passes away, then what happens is their ownership portion will be dissolved into the others. So if there are 3 people, everyone has 1/3 ownership of that property, okay? Then when one passes away, what happens is there will now be 2 owners, joint tenants, that have 50/50 ownership, because that 1/3 ownership of the one who passed away has dissolved into the other ones. It's rights of survivorship, basically, meaning, like I said, whoever survives, they get that ownership portion dissolved into the remaining what they have. Now, there is a requirement of the 4 unities. TTIP, time, title, interest, and possession. You have to have that in order to be able to take title, ownership as joint tenants, right? Joint tenants, the key benefit, rights of survivorship. It's for more than one person. Also, thing to note on this one, because corporations and partnerships and entities of that nature cannot die, they cannot take advantage of the rights of survivorship. So what happens is corporations, partnerships, limited liability corporations, anything that is not a living, breathing human being, that's why it says persons up there, okay, would have to, they cannot take title as joint tenants, okay? So that's something important to understand as well. Limited partnership. Limited partnership. Group with only partner fully liable. Self-explanatory. Not much you really need to know there. Partition. 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 This is a court-ordered sale or division. Sometimes it's typically when they're talking about partition, they're talking about a division, but it could also be a court-ordered sale. And there are numerous examples of this that I could give you, but it's a pretty straightforward definition. It's a pretty straightforward explanation in regards to what it is. So I don't think that it really needs much more than that. Okay. Partnership. 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 Co-owners join together to carry on a business. Okay. Again, not much else that I would really go into there. They're going to ask you a couple questions on businesses on the test, but I wouldn't rack your brain about it too much because I haven't heard many questions about that being about these really going into really hairy minutia detail on the test. Right of survivorship. Just spoke about this. Right of survivorship. It's a process by which co-owner automatically receives share of co-owner who dies. I explained it a couple minutes ago. You know, 3 people own something, or in one of our other ways that we could take title to a property and title as ownership. We will discuss the other way that you would have right to survivorship, and that's through tenancy by the entirety. Okay. Sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship. There's hints right here in the definition. Sole proprietorship. Business owned by one person or entity. That's it. It's sole person. There's no other person that we have to give liability to. No other anything. Sole proprietorship means one individual. Okay. That's it. Tenancy by the entirety. Tenancy by the entirety. This is our other one that's going to have rights of survivorship. This is special ownership by a married couple. Now, what I want to talk about is default ways that you will take title or ownership to a property. Ready? Default way that you take title to a property if you're more than one individual is tenancy in common. Okay, not joint tenancy. So joint tenancy, you have to meet the requirements, which means that you have to have the 4 unities upon taking title to the property. You have to have the unity of time, the unity of title, the unity of interest, and the unity of possession, T-tip. With tenancy by the entirety, the only difference is that this is the default position for a married couple that are taking title to the property. If they are married at the time they take title to the property. So this is the default, okay? So what I always say is this is how I remember this, the tenancy by the entirety requires the 4 unities, right? Because you have to, if you think about it, it does require the 4 unities. So you have the unity of time, title, interest, and possession, but also it has the unique requirement of unity of persons. Okay, that's how I refer to it. That's how some textbooks refer to it. Unity of persons, and unity of persons would be that there has to be a legal binding marriage, and you will then have rights of survivorship. So is it essentially the same as in regards to benefits, joint tenancy? Yes. The only thing is just that couple things. This is the default for married couples. So if you want to take title by in common, tenants in common, you'd have to actually specify that, because if you were both taking title to property and you were married, default is going to be tenancy by the entirety. Okay, let's move this along. And again, has rights of survivorship. Okay, tenancy in common. Tenancy in common. Now, owners are free to divide the property to any heir. Yeah, it also allows for unequal shares in the property. Okay. Also, corporations could take title to a property this way. Okay. This is the only way that they could take title to a property when there are more than one individuals or entities involved in the ownership of the real property. Okay. So those are a couple of unique things. This is usually investors. Again, corporations, if there are more than one corporation involved, more than one partnership, more than one sole proprietorship. So if there's more than one business entity involved, if there's more than one individual. So let's say me and my buddy, we wanted to purchase an investment property down in what's the place I like? I like Key West. I like Key West a lot right now. Not to invest. I'm not giving you any investment ideas. I just like Key West because I like the weather and it's beautiful, beautiful water. So anyway, I digress. Me and my buddy, we want to buy a place in Key West. What are we going to do? We're probably going to take title as tenants in common, okay? So that he could devise it to his heirs. And again, that word comes up again, devise, to will real property to someone, okay? So he'll be able to devise it to his heirs, okay? I'll be able to devise it to my heirs. Also, we could have unequal shares. So let's say he's big balling and he wants to put up a larger portion of the money than half. You know, he could be entitled to more than half of the ownership. The default would be that it would be split, but we would have to outline if there is going to be different portions of that. But again, that's what you want to know about tenancy in common. Tenancy in severalty. Tenancy in severalty. There's a key in this in regards to the word tenancy in severalty. This is real estate ownership by only one entity, only one individual, only one person. Okay. Severalty. People always think that it is several, right? More than one. It's not. It's actually severed interest. So that's why I say there's a trick in the word in the example. Tenancy and severalty is severed interest from everyone else. So you own it by yourself. Title. 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 Ownership. I've been saying it from here to Timbuktu. Title, ownership. That's it. Board of directors. Board of directors. This is a group elected to manage a cooperative. A board of directors has to do with co-ops. Depending on what state you're in, co-ops could be very prevalent. Co-ops could be something that you've never heard of. This is a new thing for you. So depending on what it is, if this is a very new thing for you, I would definitely understand what a co-op is, because they're probably going to ask you a question that's going to be pretty basic on co-ops, because again, nationwide, there are various levels of various degrees as to how much they get involved in cooperatives. You might have a state that just doesn't have any that you're even going to come in contact with. That's how it is across the country. I know over here, Manhattan, they're prevalent, and in New Jersey, not so much. You'll see one here and there, basically closer to Manhattan, but not very prevalent. Common elements, common elements, common elements. This has to do with condominium ownership. When you have condominium ownership, you're going to have common elements, and some of them are going to be stairwells, roofs, clubhouses, etc., that are owned by all members of that housing community. Right? Condominium, condominium, condominium. This is fee simple ownership of a living unit. I don't like that explanation at all, because it could be ownership could be different. Like the estate type that you have could you could have a life estate for a condominium ownership type, right? So I don't like that they use the word fee simple, because fee simple is the highest form of ownership in real estate, but you can have more restrictive forms of ownership in real estate in regards to what type of estate interest we have in that, right? Because if you've heard my ownership explanation, what happens is to understand what type of ownership you have to make sure that you understand what type of estate interest you have, and then how you take title to the property, how you take ownership, right? So that is something that helps you understand what type of ownership an individual entity or groups of individuals or entities have in that real property. Okay, so fee simple ownership of living unit. No, a condominium. I'm really going to say, and again, I'm pulling these words right from the key terms in this chapter. So I'm basically going along with you. If you have this book, this is supplemental stuff for you to review, read. And as I said, I do disagree or agree with some of the words that they're going to be using. This is really a study aid for you guys. So condominium, I really like to say that it has several characteristics or master deeds in regards to condominium ownership. You can have a fee simple. You can have a fee simple estate interest. You can have a life estate estate interest. You can have fee defeasible as long as it's legal and within the guidelines of the covenants and restrictions of the condominium ownership. And also, condominiums have common elements that are maintained and upkept by the homeowners association, and that money is paid out of reserves that the homeowners association has that are funded by homeowners association dues, which are usually monthly dues. Conversion, conversion, conversion. This is an apartment house change into condos. Usually conversion, they're talking about co-ops that shift over to condominiums. That's very popular. It happens in Manhattan. Don't scratch your head with the why, because the why is not really relevant for the test. You won't need to know the why. If you have a curiosity, and understand this too, this is a good time for me to tell you guys my thoughts on this. Sometimes what happens is really need to understand you're cramming a lot into your head, okay? A lot. And what happens is you want to tie a lot of the things back to a practical. You want to have it make sense. You want to tie it to a story. You want to tie it to something. Do not get too caught up on the why, because the why might distract you from really truly understanding the material, where you really need to understand the vocab. You need to understand the language of real estate, and not necessarily why and when you would use that in a sentence, if that makes sense for you, right? So think about it. If I'm learning a language, okay, I'm going to start learning the vocabulary. No, this is that, this is that, this is that, so that when I see it used in a sentence, I could go, okay, that's what that is. Okay. Understanding further deeper explanations of certain things, sometimes that just bogs some students down, and I've seen that happen. So try not to fall into that trap, and try to see if you could compartmentalize the further explanation of the why, right? To, okay, I don't think I need to know that right now. I really need to get down the definition, understand the definition enough to be able to answer questions. That's all you need. That's all you need. Cooperative. Cooperative. This is an apartment whose buyer receives proprietary lease as well as stock in a corporation. Yes, also has a board of directors that approves either tenants or actually everyone's a tenant. So owners in the corporation, people who purchase stock in the corporation, that would allow them to have a proprietary lease for one unit. Also, some other characteristics of cooperatives is that there is a monthly maintenance fee. What happens is that fee is significantly higher than what you would expect to see in a condominium ownership. Reason being is because you don't actually own real property. So there is no title, right? There is only a proprietary lease, and there is stocks that you own in that corporation. Now, people always ask me, they're like, oh, is it like Pepsi? No, you don't own it. It is like it, but you don't own stock in Pepsi or like Best Buy, something like that. You actually own stock in the corporation that owns the building. So basically what they'll do is they'll set up a corporation, and you will have an interest in that corporation, right? And those stock, usually one of the characteristics of cooperatives is it stays pretty stagnant. You're not going to really make a killing on, being in a cooperative and having those stock in that corporation. Okay. So you're really not doing it for an equity play. It's usually because it's a much more affordable option than others in that area. So what happens, and that's why I say it's very prevalent in Manhattan. And what happens is you get stock in a corporation that, and keep in mind, that's personal property, that's personalty. So that is transferred through a bill of sale. Okay. And then when you get the stock in the corporation, your personal property, you will then also be granted a proprietary lease to one unit. Okay. So that's a cooperative. Homeowners association, homeowners association, homeowners association. This is all owners in one condominium complex. Yeah, so every single homeowner in a condominium complex does have the right to belong to a homeowners association. The homeowners association, as I was saying earlier, collects funds monthly. It could be annually too. There's different ways that homeowners associations are set up. Typically, it's monthly, and then those funds are put into reserves, and those reserves are then used to upkeep the common areas, roofs, stairwells, lawns, pool, clubhouse, things like that. Horizontal Property Acts. Horizontal Properties Act. Horizontal Properties Act. This regulates the creation of condominiums. That's it. It's pretty simple. I'm not going to go too much into it. Proprietary lease. Said this a lot before. Proprietary lease. Co-op owners' right to an apartment. So what happens is when you own stock in a corporation, um, you're going to have a proprietary lease. So what happens is that proprietary lease gives you the rights to an apartment in that building. Okay, co-op owner's right to an apartment is the proprietary lease. Reserves. I've been saying a lot of these words already. It's kind of good. It's making it easy. This is money set aside for future repairs. And really, you have to understand the reserves are for, really, they're going to be referring to it in a condominium setting where there's a homeowners association set up. So that's something to keep in mind. Time sharing. Time sharing. Awful. I'll go on record and say that it's awful. Time sharing is ownership for part of the year. This is super popular in like the 60s and 70s and even 80s, where some of you, depending on what age you are, you might have owned a timeshare or your parents might have owned a timeshare. What happened was basically these corporations and things would get together and they would pitch to people who were on vacation. So the thing when you're on vacation, you're having a great freaking. I'd be like, yeah, so we'd love to own a second town home in Key West. You can't afford a full home in Key West, so what we're going to do is we're going to get 52 people together, and what happens is you're going to own this property, so you going to be taxes involved. There's going to be a closing cost involved, all that stuff. These 52 people, you're all going to own the property together, and you're each going to get a year out of it every year, and you don't have to pay anything other than the annual taxes, and again, it's going to be prorated down, spread across 52 people. Great thing. It is to sell timeshares in most states, you need to have a real estate license, state specific. In New Jersey, that's a yes. So if we're talking New Jersey, you do have to have a real estate license to sell timeshares. And they are a pain in the butt to get rid of. And I just wanted to kind of tell you a little bit about what it was for those of you who might not ever have heard of it, right? So it still happens today, still goes on, and it's again, it's really more complicated to get rid of it and sell it because there's not really a secondary market for timeshares, really. So again, That's what a timeshare is. Last one, townhouse, townhouse, townhouse. And this is strictly an architectural term. A townhouse could be a condominium. It could be fee simple ownership where you have where there's no condominium involved. Townhouse is strictly a style of home. It is not anything to do with ownership. It is strictly an architectural home, way to describe the way something looks. When I say a townhome, you probably think of a certain thing, and you think of houses that are in a row, okay, that are connected to one another, share common walls. Again, it's strictly an architectural term. Guys, I hope this has helped. Have a great one.